As everyone alluded to fairly quickly on the last panel, Amazon Robotics has quickly become the 800-pound gorilla in the room over the course of the past decade. To discuss why and where warehouse robotics and labor are going, I'm chatting with VP Joseph Quinlivan. Let's do this. Hi, everybody. My name is Brian Heater. I am the hardware editor at TechCrunch. We just got off a panel about warehouse and fulfillment robotics with Locust, Zebra, and Berkshire Grey. It's arguably the hottest category in robotics at the moment, and Amazon has been a tremendously large part of that story. This afternoon, I am joined by Joe Quinlivan, Amazon's VP of Global Robotics Fulfillment and Information Technology, to discuss all of that and more. Joe, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
So Amazon's robotics story, I would say, started in a very real way back in 2012 with the acquisition of Kiva Systems. Joe, you actually date back with the company even further than that. You were there in the very, very early days of this process. Sure. What was driving Amazon's robotics play in those very early days, and how have things evolved over the past decade?
Yeah, I think Amazon has a track record of kind of thinking big and thinking long term. And they're not, and they don't get tied up in the short term. And they recognized that they saw their growth and they saw the challenges that that accompanied that growth. And I think they realized they needed to make a bet in terms of automation. And at the time, in their fulfillment centers, the bottleneck was really in pick and stow and ICQA. And we had developed technology at Kiva Systems, which I think really simply focused on that. On those challenges, and we were having a fair bit of success in the industry, and then but I think it was a great relationship, and I think it was super smart of Amazon to make the acquisition, and I think it's exceeded their expectations, and from a Kiva side, I think it being there 4 years before the acquisition, it exceeded our expectations, the impact that we could have on Amazon.
You bring up a good point. Traditionally, when we think of a lot of these warehouse robotics, they're really robot arms that are, picking things off a conveyor belt. And Kiva was very much a different approach. These little wheeled robots that are effectively moving shelves around. Why was that the key to unlocking the system for you?
I think it's that last term you use, systems. I think the difference between, and Kiva was really intentional about this, that had this term, but they had this thing that was called Kiva Systems, not Kiva Robotics. And they thought about the solution level and the systems level and the full degree of automation that was necessary. And much of it was much beyond the robot, the layer one. If you think about a hardware stack, a layer one, layer two, they thought about layer 3, 4, 5, and 6, which provided a comprehensive, seamless end-to-end solution that just operated, that understood not only the tasks that need to be executed, but the allocation of those resources, the scheduling of those resources, the state of those resources, and how to best optimize those. So I think although we're proud of the robotics we develop, and it's a ton of innovation, but the more we can make this a systems level play and a software optimization play, I think you get the speed and velocity of improvement over and over.
Yeah, I mean, another traditional view of these things are these really sort of single purpose-built robots, robots that really perform one task well, but repetitively over and over again. Was this an opportunity to buck that system and to create robots that could do more than, I guess, just one specific thing well?
Yeah, and that really is the systems level architecture kind of mindset we have. We never think of a product as a bespoke, do one thing, do one function. When we're looking at our technology and looking at our architecture, we look at every subcomponent and look at what capability does that provide us, and how can we kind of commoditize that in much like in the software space, build a clean API and form factor around that gets to be reused across many different robotic platforms or solutions and architectures. And so I think one of the reasons we've been able to go pretty fast and have a wide array of products beyond the initial Kiva product that was acquired is we were able to use this architecture and these technologies that were thought about more than just a problem we're immediately solving. And that has served us really, really well.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big question that a lot of people have is how to really build what's effectively a robotic ecosystem. And it sounds like effectively what you're getting at here is that some form of modularity with the hardware is the key.
Yeah, and that is the key. We look at our technology and we think of every component within that is a product. So the system is what the user sees, but every subcomponent within that architecture, we think is an independent product. If we want to sell that, we could go sell that and market it. So we could do that, and we architect and engineer it that way, and we validate it in that way, that it has it's well-defined spec, well-defined interfaces, well-defined capability and performance characteristics, and we validate that at a pretty rigorous level.
You bring up an interesting point. Obviously these are being made specifically for the Amazon warehouse, but I think that if Amazon did want to market these things, they could. Is that has that sort of ever been in the cards of actually selling these to third parties?
Yeah, no, I think every now and then that comes up, and I think what we always come down to is we're so consumed. I can barely fulfill the demand I have in terms of the portfolio we need to develop for Amazon because of its growth and its diversity of supply chain, that I'm pretty much consumed. And one thing you realize, because I worked on both sides of the fence, because when we were at Kiva and at Amazon, the scale of Amazon, the things we do at Amazon is very different than sometimes when you're in a standalone company where incredible flexibility, because you're tying to all these other bespoke systems, higher level warehouse management systems, stuff like this. So you need scale, and necessarily sometimes availability are not like often the priority. It's more about flexibility and flexibility to be able to adapt into many different environments, where really what we want to do is a lot of standardization and scale at Amazon. So although when you blur your eyes, they seem like very similar problems, but often when you really focus, it's a different problem set.
Yeah, I mean, for precisely that reason, this might be a difficult question to quantify, but how many different sorts of systems would you say the team is working on concurrently?
I would say in the ballpark of 14 to 16 different level systems, but the upside is a lot of the subsystems are being leveraged across all of them, and a lot of the same software infrastructure or modeling, and of course with the advances in computer vision and machine learning, the data set we have to draw from, many of the problem sets we can draw from similar data sets.
Maybe a slightly easier question to quantify is, because I ask this because this number keeps changing for obvious reasons, but I mean, effectively, how many robotic systems does Amazon have deployed across fulfillment centers in the US currently?
Well, we'll talk about mobile robots. So we have over 520,000 mobile robots deployed. And if we think of at a site, we call that a robotic system. A robotic system might have, 3,500, 4,000 robots in it. Having said that, we have manipulation platforms that are out there. We think about ID as a form of robotics, sortation systems out there. So I think we have, again, 12 to 14, what I call major systems at scale deployed with varying different technology capabilities. When we think about automation and robotics, we think about 6 capabilities that you really need to master to automate anything in e-commerce. And, it's around storage. How do you store? How do you manipulate? How do you move? How do you sort? How do you ID? And how do you pack? And so if you think about those capabilities, that's where we focus developing our capabilities around those 6 fundamental capabilities. And then from there, we develop products. And you might find out in the movement space, the technology that helped you in your movement space was the same technology that helped you in the ID space, understanding what someone did with some product. And so that's how we kind of think about our technology and our capabilities.
So the pandemic has obviously had a profound impact on robotics broadly and fulfillment specifically.
Sure.
In a lot of ways, Amazon Robotics was ahead of that curve, having been doing this for 10 plus years. Yeah. But how much has the pandemic itself actually had an accelerating effect on Amazon Robotics?
I think prior to the pandemic, we were already accelerating. I think we had recognized some things that happened in the technology space that were going to give us the ability to go faster than we had planned in terms of advances in sensing, compute technology coming down, advances in GPU. So I think there was already an acceleration. Certainly the pandemic and the growth of Amazon, almost unprecedented growth of Amazon during the pandemic, really challenged us to look at our roadmap and look at our programs and how we could go faster. And so we've had significant investments over the last couple of years in the teams. We always had healthy investment, but I think there was a doubling down on that investment. And I'm super excited. I really, Amazon has this culture of day one. And I think if it really is true for the robotic space, I think we're just scratched the surface of what we're going to do in terms of automation and robotics and our capabilities and what we can do for our associates and our customers. So it's never been a more exciting time to be here. I've been here 10 years. And for me, I don't think I ever had a job really more than 5 years of my life. I kind of usually get bored and move on. And I would say the challenge here has never been better in the environment. And, if you really want to do robotics, the innovation in robotics at scale, at speed, in my find, is no better place to work than the work we're doing here.
So obviously the question of job loss at the hands of automation is a hot button, but I would argue very important topic. How can robotic developers ensure that humans continue to play a role in these warehouses?
Yeah, I think there's a couple dimensions to that kind of question that I would think about. Number one, I think we always think about innovation in general. It drives transformation. And I think we've always seen over the history of the country, innovation has always created jobs in the long run, right? And so I think we have that all the time where we're creating, and I think, it's when, since 2012, I think we've created over 1 million jobs at Amazon, right? But sometimes there's a transformation of skills. And one thing I'm super proud of is we have this robotics engineering program and maintenance program where associates who come in, in the pick and stow functions, and we have an apprenticeship program and we train them and we upskill them and they become robotic engineering support engineers, right? And that's a really valuable skill set in today's environment to have that training, for free. And we develop our associates that way. And then there's another dimension about the kind of interactions with human and robots, right? And our mentality is, I think historically has been, when people develop automation, is here's this piece of automation and have the human adapt to that automation for that automation's capability. And we've kind of turned that around, and we've had some success with. We understand, hey, here's this robotic capability. Your job is the function of the automation and robotics is to adapt to the human capability. When we talk about human capability, we're not talking about generic human capability. We're talking about very specific human capability, where the machine should be able to learn the preferences of the person who's interfacing with that and adapt to those preferences. And we've had some success doing that. And so that's how we think about human machine collaboration, is that the machine should adapt to humans' capability and not vice versa.
Yeah, that brings up an interesting point. Obviously, this is a complaint that I'm sure you've seen a lot, that we've certainly seen a lot on our ends, is that there are ways in which sometimes humans working alongside robots can make the human's job more robotic. How do you avoid that?
I think we've tried. I think that's a great question, and I think it's a challenge for all roboticists around the world who are faced with this challenge. I think the one thing we try to do is think about what are the most arduous and physically demanding tasks, and how can we lessen that for the human, whether it's lifting something or some type of repetitive motion that is probably not something we desire to have. I think it comes into, when you look at your products, what's the intent for the associate and what's the intent for our customer? And it comes in our architecture and how we think about the design of it, and then how we validate that in the very early stages, we're getting the outcome we want, right? And getting feedback from the associates. So in our product portfolio, what we try to do is in the very early stages, we try to pull all the personas for anyone who's going to interface with this technology and get them early in the design cycle and early in the prototyping cycle, and have them give us early feedback on what works, what doesn't work, what they like, what they don't like. And we try to adjust and modify our designs to get that outcome.
Yeah, you touched on this a little bit, but I think that more broadly, this is a part of the conversation that people seem to gloss over when they talk about these sort of long-term job creation, is what happens to those people right now. What happens to those people who maybe don't have experience programming robots or working with robots. Short-term people, I think, will lose their jobs. So short-term, what can we do to help those people adapt? And ultimately, where does that responsibility fall? Does it fall on Amazon's shoulders? Is it on the government shoulders? who should shoulder that specific burden?
I think everyone has a role in making sure the people in our community have opportunity, right? And certainly the government has a role. I think we've got a bit of a culture where, if you let you have a college education, potentially you're not valued in terms of the workforce. I think that's completely wrong. I think there's lots of opportunity in skill training that the government could play a role in, or certainly offering training opportunities in hard, tangible skill sets that are valued today. I think companies also have a role in that. I know we have taken a role in that. And as I talked about previously, we have investments in apprenticeship programs where we can take people who potentially don't have developed technical skill sets and over a very relatively short period of time, give them the technical skill sets to upskill and move in jobs. Like, we have lots of opportunities for our, what we call robotic engineers, robotic support engineers to come in. As this technology grows, there's a different level of consumption of those technical resources, and I don't see that going away. And actually, I see just the opposite. I see career paths that people wouldn't have had now have a robust career path for many years to come. So I see the opposite. I see it every day.
So at Remars a few weeks ago, Amazon showcased a number of systems. Proteus is really the one that I think caught our eye and caught everybody else's eye. Fully autonomous, one of these real robotic systems. I have to ask, is that technology a direct result of the company's acquisition of Canvas?
No. I think that was an internally developed derivative of the Amazon Robotics team, that came out of the Kiva acquisition, had done that. A lot of times at Amazon, we have concurrent development efforts, and we're excited about what the Canvas technologies are going to deliver, and they're going to focus on a different application we haven't announced yet than the Proteus application. Autonomy is a very, very big space, and there's lots of capability you need, and for different process paths. And so as we think about that, we're super excited about the Canvas acquisition, and I'm sure there'll be some in the future. We're going to have some success stories from that. But the Proteus came directly from the Amazon Robotics team, and it goes to that modular architecture we talked about. We were able to deliver that program on the modular architecture from other programs we had done, and be able to deliver that product in a relatively short time. And we're super excited about that product.
So now, as we said at the top, the creation of Amazon Robotics in a lot of ways was built upon an acquisition. You've got this robust team now. You've got all these projects that you're working on. How do you do the math as to whether this is something your team should focus on, or whether you need to go externally and acquire a company? And how big a role will acquisitions play in the Amazon Robotics story going forward?
Well, I think where people get in trouble is they get arrogance about their capability, and I don't think we have an appreciation for. I spend a lot of my time in startups, and so I have an appreciation for the talent and culture and type of drive that a well-formed startup can offer. And so we have an appreciation for the people who do that. And I think going forward, it'll always be a combination of, we'll do stuff internally, but we'll look for partnerships and when it makes sense. And if an acquisition makes sense, we'll go do acquisitions. But I don't think we feel like we have all the capabilities, and we have all the technologies, and we have all the products to solve every challenge that Amazon could imagine. And so we want to have good relationships, good partnerships with those startups. And as you probably know, we do a fair bit of funding in the university system for research that we generally get no benefit from, but we just think it's important that our best minds have access to the technologies and research funds to push the boundaries of the science. And so I think it'll be like anything else. It'll be a healthy balance between all three.
Yeah, it's interesting, this idea of partially acquiring these companies for I guess for the team and for the work environment, things like that, which seems to, I would suspect, means ultimately that there are a little bit of growing pains when it comes to actually integrating both the team and the technology into this broader division. And how do you sort of cushion that blow?
Yeah, so I've been through 3 acquisitions. So I did 3 startups. I went through 3 acquisitions. So I have some scars from the other side coming in. Mm-hmm. I thought my acquisition to Kiva, our acquisition to Kiva, was really, really well done. I think Amazon learned a lot about how to do it. I think, like anything else, as you go through these things, there are things they learned that they wish they had done differently. When it came to our acquisition, did an exceptional job of putting a senior level person who kind of helped us and literally stayed with us for 2 years for this acquisition and helped us build the tentacles and the tissue, connective tissue. But I think it starts with the acquiring company having respect for what's been done. I mean, you bought them for a reason. You valued their technology, their people, their talent, their culture. And the worst thing I think you can do is try to squelch that. I think you want to find things that you can build on, and it takes a good collaboration from both teams to recognize how can they draw the best out of Amazon. That's what I thought we did well. We recognized kind of what we weren't doing well, and how could we get either resources or approaches or technology to help speed our innovation, and vice versa. I think Amazon has a lot of respect and showed us a lot of respect on acquisition about what we had accomplished. And so I think it always starts with respect and open-mindedness about thinking about things differently than you would traditionally solve problems with. And if you start there, I think you end up in a good spot.
Yeah, I mean, the other part that we haven't really touched on yet of this puzzle is recently, back in April, the company introduced this $1 billion industrial innovation fund. Yeah. The first round of 5 companies included a bunch of different robotics firms, like Agility, for example. Ultimately, what is the end goal of a fund like that for Amazon?
I think we recognized is kind of be a good steward of the robotics community is that access to 2 things. One, you need access to capital, right? And so providing capital. Second thing is access to people who know what problems need to be solved and helping them think about their problem set. And then third thing is when they're having a technical challenge, if there's a way we could help them in some way, we'll help them. We are excited about the growth. We're really kind of focused, although Agility is kind of a little further down the road for the most of them, we're really starting in early or super early stage companies to make sure the best minds have access to resources and talent and capital and to help them get on their feet. And if, see them grow, we're excited to see them grow. We think a healthier robotics community is good for everyone. It's good for us. It's good for the country. And so that's where I think our mental model is.
I mean, obviously, if you're willing to invest a lot of money in these companies, you're very interested in their technology and their business model. I mean, would you say that, that acquisition or integration might be part of that fund story?
I don't think we don't lead with, I don't think that's our focus. I don't think we invest, especially at the early stage companies saying, oh, we want to invest in this because we want to acquire it. We never have that discussion. We invest because we believe that the people have a passion for what they're solving. It's an interesting problem they're solving. And we almost have a mentality, we want to invest in people and things we don't even believe in. We don't believe that they could be achieved because we could be wrong. The human spirit is pretty amazing. When people have a passion to believe and to do something, they can overcome all sorts of crazy obstacles. And so we want to make sure those people have access. And so, no, I think the stages we're investing in are really super early stage, and we'll see where they go. If one comes to an acquisition at some point, great. If it doesn't, and they grow to a nice big company and they're people wildly successful and they're pushing the boundaries of technology, it's good for the whole country. It's good for us.
I think one of the really exciting things about looking, at early stage robotics generally, but certainly some of the companies in this fund, whether it's Agility's legged robot or, there's a company that actually has the robots that, go up and down shelves. Is the different approaches that everybody is taking to this problem. And this is a huge question that I like to ask everybody around robotics, a difficult one to answer, but I think a fun one. What does the warehouse ultimately look like, say, 5 or 10 years out?
I think it's a harmony of people and robots. I don't necessarily envision this fully automated.
Okay, so people are not going away.
I don't believe so. I don't believe they're going away. I think we want to embrace what make humans great and what their unique capability is. And even though the advances in AI and CV and all this capability, I think there's going to be a significant role for people in the supply chain, and we're excited about that. I don't want to be foolish to predict, something that is. There are so many other smart people out there doing amazing work. I just have an appreciation for what they're doing and what we're doing, and it'll find its way. But I do believe that people will have a significant role in the future of e-commerce and automation and retail, and they'll work in harmony and concert with the technology.
So real quick, do you think that the warehouses, the spaces, physical spaces themselves of the future are going to be basically built around robotics and automation?
I No, I think it'll be a harmony of people and automation. I don't think it's going to be around automation. As I said, I think the job of automation is to adapt to the people and the people's capabilities.
Yeah. And this, well, the spaces, the physical, actually, the actual buildings, a lot of these places are being retrofitted currently.
Yeah, I think having technology, that we have this kind of mental model. Can we pour our technology into like a liquid into any form factor and have it be useful? Is kind of how we think about when we think about systems level and architecture. That's how we think about it.
Well, Joe, obviously we could keep this going for a while longer, but we're out of time right now, unfortunately. So thank you so much for taking the time today.
I appreciate the opportunity, Brian. Have a great day.